usually when I get up. Actually, yeah, I get up. Molly's got to be at school by 8:30, so I get up by 7:15, 7:30, usually.
That makes a difference.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So what you been up to?
Eva's going to a retreat this weekend, so I figured it's good timing for me to go to Lighthouse. So
Where is the retreat?
Yeah, Arkansas, of all places.
Arkansas?
Arkansas.
Whoa. How long is she going to be there? A week?
Yeah, she's just going Friday, come back Sunday.
Fly all the way to Arkansas just for 2 days?
Yeah.
Jeez. Where in Arkansas?
About an hour and a half from Little Rock.
God, she's going to be spending more time in the plane than the car than she is at the.
That is
Well, why does she want to go to this out of the way spot?
Oh, she's got a couple of contacts there, and it's kind of a sort of a Bible study type thing.
Oh, okay. That's kind of off the beaten path, though.
Oh yeah, especially this one. Even for
funny.
Arkansas, apparently.
Arkansas. That's one state I've never been to. I've been to 43 states, but I have not been to Arkansas. I've been to Arkansas. Haven't been to Kansas, the Dakotas, South Dakota or South Carolina, Delaware, or Alaska.
Oh,
Every other place I've been to.
Yes, I've been in Kansas. I went to a place called Independence,
Oh, yeah.
Kansas, outside of Independence, Missouri.
Yeah, that's Harry Truman's hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, was he Independence, Missouri?
Yeah, Independence, Missouri.
Okay,
Yeah.
see, this was Independence, Kansas.
Oh,
So, which is about 80 miles away.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I like, it's a nice town is St. Louis. I've been there about half a dozen times. That's a real nice town. I wouldn't want to live there, but nice place to visit.
Yeah.
Milwaukee, good city. Chicago, God, I love Chicago. Have you been to Chicago?
I have, except for O'Hare.
Yeah, I've been there about 3 or 4 times for Giants games. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you ever been there? That's a nice town.
No, it's funny. There's been a lot of places I haven't been.
Yeah, the only major American city I haven't been to Baltimore, haven't been to Pittsburgh, haven't been to Nashville, haven't been to Tampa. Those are probably the only major ones. I've been to Dallas, New Orleans, Houston, Miami,
I still
Atlanta.
haven't been to New Orleans yet either. I want to do that.
New Orleans, yeah, New Orleans is fun. I've been there about 3 times. Been to 2 Super Bowls down there. And Atlanta about 6 times, Dallas 3 times, Boston 3 or 4 times, New York about half a dozen times. Plus, I lived in New York.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love living in New York.
Yeah, New York's great.
Yeah, it's God. Talk about a big city. Ooh.
When I was, I was born there, moved out here, and when I was like 2.
In New York City.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, okay.
Yeah. And in the in the 70s and stuff. I mean, apparently it's crime ridden and subways all tagged and all that.
What year were you born?
60.
60, okay.
When we went back in 1991 to go visit my aunt and uncle, we said, "Oh, let's ride a subway. We've never been on a subway before, right?" It was so clean.
Yeah, after the 80s.
Yeah.
80s
really
were
clean.
just awful.
Yeah.
I was there in 81. It was like right after, I guess, ready to shut down a bunch of the mental homes, and there were all these people all over the street. It was just like,
Gotcha.
The Times Square was just to walk through that place to get to the bus depot or get to the train station was like, walking through a minefield.
Yeah.
I remember walking through there just feeling really uncomfortable. Who was born in Brooklyn at about the same time you were as Michael Jordan.
He was born in Brooklyn?
Yeah, he was born in Brooklyn in 1963. Yeah, just celebrated. It's interesting. He and Jim Brown have the same birthday. Jim Brown celebrated his 80th birthday. Was it Tuesday? And Michael Jordan is 53rd.
It's funny. My business partner Marco was born the same day and year as Barry Bonds. So
Really? July 24th, 1964. Wow.
Same exact.
Bobby was not even 18 when he had Barry. Nobody's ready to have a kid when they're 18. Well, especially a guy.
God, they died so young.
Bobby was a tortured soul. Nice guy once you got to know him, but really, really tortured soul. His dad was horrible. No question he abused him, physically. Just intimidating.
Bobby,
Still not there. Yeah, just
At the tone, please record your message.
I'm sure he's going to be answering in a sec. So. No big deal.
That's just terrible to abuse kids.
Yeah, your own child too.
I know.
I mean, why? Why would you do that?
mean, I discipline the kids, but you don't abuse. You don't get to a point where they're like, I have to do that or anything.
And my dad spanked me a few times, but never anything that I didn't deserve. My wife doesn't believe in that at all anymore. She just believes in using a firm voice, and reinforcing it. And not one thing I've noticed with some parents, they hover over their kids and just and they oh, poor little Sammy.
Oh yeah, no, you can't do that.
That kind of thing.
Ruin them.
Yeah, you do that, and you just try to control them too much. And then the other side is just complete laissez-faire.
Yeah.
It's a real finesse thing.
It is.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta. They have to know that you love them, but they have to make their mistakes.
Yeah.
You never. I mean, we spank the kids. The thing is, you spank them early enough.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you probably heard the story of like you take an elephant, and when they're really young, you put like a chain around their ankle. You heard about that?
No.
Okay, so what happens is with an elephant, like in the circus or whatever like that, baby elephant, you put a chain around its ankle, and it tugs, but it's not strong enough to break the chain. Okay, but it remembers. So when it's a grown huge elephant, you can put almost like a string. You can just put a little rope around it, and it'll just kind of go, no, can't do it. I won't. It doesn't even try to break it.
Interesting.
Because it just thinks that
a very intelligent animal to know that.
Yeah. And so it's sort of thing. It's like
interesting.
So you spank your kids early enough, and not beat them, but you spank them.
Yeah.
And then you just. But then you can start just using your words later on.
Yeah.
Do you need a spanking? No.
Yeah, Molly has been pretty good. She never caused any of that kind of problem. And Colette is so good with kids. I mean, she's just, I trust her implicitly because she's got a master's degree in education and dealing with crazy kids. Kids that really have severe emotional
And not all kids
problems.
need spanking.
No.
Sometimes you can talk. A 2-year-old is hard to talk to, but sometimes you could just do other things, time out or whatever, and that's fine.
I'm always amazed when you run into a really smart kid that's like one of our neighbors. Molly's really good friends with a little girl. She's 6 years old. This little girl's vocabulary is amazing. I mean, she's reading high school level books. It's going to be just a little genius, But she's also very headstrong, and her parents kind of hover around her. It's like they're older parents. Both of them are older. If one is older, it's okay. Two, I've noticed that with older parents and a single child, it gets really.
That is kind of. Hey, I tell you what. Since we're waiting for.
Let's do that. Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Good. That's a good idea.
All right.
Like a plan. All right.
Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Today's show is going to be really cool. Why?
Well, we got the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, the 3-time World Series champions, Bobby Evans, who works very closely with the longtime GM, who now has moved up in the front office, Brian Sabian. So we'll have a sort of a preview of the Giants and of spring training in general as pitchers and catchers are reporting, and pretty soon it's time for the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League seasons.
And I guess Bobby always kind of stayed in the background, didn't he?
He did. He did. And then he was being groomed, very much kind of like what David Forrest has been groomed to do with the Oakland A's, taking over for Billy Beane. So this happens in baseball, and it's a smart thing. You find somebody, you work with them, and you build them up into that position, and then they inherit that spot.
And
so
hopefully they don't move on.
Hopefully. That's the whole idea. Keep them around.
Yeah.
Keep the flow going.
Otherwise, you just keep investing in them, and then they thank you very much.
Yeah.
And they go take a head job somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many times that happened? Like football, right?
Oh yeah. No question.
All right, we're going to ask at each commercial break. We're going to ask a trivia question, and since we're going to be winding down the next month or two to the NBA, I thought we'd make this the NBA Masters, as they say.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it'll be kind of fun. And then a couple of things I was going to ask you, Bruce, was about I wonder how many NBA trades are done for the money reasons versus reality of making a run at a championship.
Well, it depends on the situation you're in. If you're hopelessly out of contention, you're looking ahead to the future. But a lot of times teams have to make a decision based on the amount of money. For instance, Dwight Howard, the underachieving center with the Houston Rockets, is in a position where his name is being bandied about, but the amount of money you're going to have to pay this guy, it's prohibitive. So do you want to mess around with your team chemistry and take on that kind of an obligation, or that's something to consider?
Very good. All right, so stay with us. When we come back from commercial break, hopefully we will have Bobby Evans on. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. Don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
You have a pen I could borrow?
Of course.
Yeah, a couple of minutes here. No, hopefully Bobby will be answering the phone. Please answer the phone, Bobby. Almighty.
Actually, good when you get these guys like the day before, because then they'll remember.
Yeah.
That's the only number we have for him, too, right?
Yeah, it's funny because I called the Giants and they patched me right through to him, and it was weird. I got his cell phone. I said, "How did I get patched?" Oh, they're patching all the numbers through to my cell phone. So, yeah.
Okay, but we'll try him one more time. Otherwise, maybe we'll do the first segment.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully he'll answer this too.
Is there another number we can call him, right?
I can try one more number, but I don't know. Hopefully this one will be the good one. Yeah, the fact that he's not picking up right now, that's good.
Yeah.
Hello?
Bobby?
Yes.
Hi, it's Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan. How are you?
Hey, very good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon.
Hey, Bobby, how you doing, man? How's the weather down there?
Hey, it's beautiful. Couldn't be any better.
Great. Yeah, I saw it was interesting. I saw ESPN today had some little brief interviews with Bumgarner and Buster and also Samardzija.
Nice.
Pedro Gomez was down there, so he had a nice little sort of an overview.
Yeah,
So.
keep the weather good there. I'm going to be down at spring training March
Are you
11th
going there?
to 13th.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry. It's going to be nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we'll tell you what. We know your time's valuable. We've got a couple of, if you can stay with us for 2 segments. They last almost 10 minutes each. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, so let's get right into it. I'll have Bruce introduce you. Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan, my co-host. Bruce, who do we have on the phone?
One of the good guys at baseball, the young general manager of the San Francisco Giants, and I say that with all due respect because he's really come along so well working with Brian Sabian and has been promoted the last few years to general manager. And, of course, the Giants, under Bobby Evans, won a World Series in 2014. They've won 3 the last 6 years. Bobby, thanks for joining us. I got to ask you first, right off the bat, your pitchers and catchers are in camp. Excitement is building, and of course, this is an even year, so you're going to win.
That's right.
You're going to win it all again this year, right?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy because then it's just a matter of turning the calendar and getting patient in the odd years. But these guys are fired up and they know what their job is ahead of them. And unfortunately, we had a long winter, but fortunately, that does give them some extra rest and all the more ready to get started here this spring.
Well, you made a lot of news in the offseason. You beefed up your starting rotation ever since Bonds left in 2007. The Giants have really put an emphasis on pitching and defense. You brought in Jeff Samardzija and you brought in Johnny Cueto. I got to ask you about Johnny Cueto. Interesting guy to watch because he has that violent motion out on the mound. He's so distinctive in his style. He's one of those guys that can just really dominate a game. Did you have a good feeling that you were going to be able to pick him up? Was there? I know he was out there as a free agent. How did that happen anyway?
Well, not at all. I think that we looked at it as probably a free agent that would be far away above what we could approach in terms of the deal, and our expectations were that his market would take him away from us, and so when we got into the winter meetings and we had already secured Samardzija, Cueto was still out there. We had fortunately seen some of the reports in terms of what he had been offered by Arizona, and our feeling was, if Arizona had gotten him for that, they would have gotten a steal. So we felt like, well, maybe if we add something to that, maybe we can, lure him to San Francisco, and at that point, I think we hit him at the right time because he was anxious to pursue other opportunities out there, and fortunately for us, he saw a good fit as we did, and of course, he had a career year in 2014 and didn't have a bad year in 15. He had some bumps in the road, but some of that happens when guys get traded, and certainly shifting to the American League. But he pitched well in the World Series. We feel like we've got a guy that we can really put out there every fifth day and behind Bumgarner and do a great job for him.
I thought you wanted to add him because you liked Louis Tion. He kind of reminds me of him, doesn't he?
Yeah,
I was a big Louis Tion fan, to be honest. But no, not so much reason why we got him. I'll take that as well.
How about Samardzija now? Samardzija had a rough year last year, 11-14, I think, with a 4.96 ERA. But we have to qualify that by saying he was pitching for a very poor White Sox team. So that really, I would think, Bobby, that's not really a good sample size of what you're going to get out of Jeff Samardzija. He's back in a pitcher's league. He's in a pitcher's ballpark. I would think the numbers would be much better next year.
Yeah, not coming off a career year in 2014, not a great year for him. The trade to the White Sox was really not a good fit for him ultimately, and some of that may be relative to the struggles they had to win, maybe somewhat relevant to the defense they had behind them. But ultimately, Samardzija had to make adjustments, and he didn't make those adjustments. And he struggled, and he got hit quite a bit. And so we're certainly lucky to get him at the numbers we got him at, given what his value would have been coming off of 14. The downside, however, is that we are taking on some risk, and that we're expecting a bounce back from him, and really depending on that. But this is a guy with a fresh arm. He doesn't have as many innings as a lot of guys in his position, of course, partly because he pitched out of the bullpen for a while, and of course a football guy as well. So he again hasn't logged innings that some of these guys have, and therefore we feel like we've got a good, healthy, strong kid to help us.
Maybe just coming back to the Bay Area, will help. So let me ask you from a financial standpoint. He played pretty well with the A's. He was a good pitcher, and then he goes to the White Sox and has a bad year. Realistically, how much did that affect his payday, so to speak? You know what I mean? It's like if you would have caught him before the White Sox, what would his salary have been compared to what it is now?
Well, good question, and hard for me to speculate that. Publicly, I think that the value point would have taken him, I think, significantly above where we got him. But the name of the game is what have you done for me lately? And he struggled in 15, and so that certainly changed some of what his market looked like. At the end of the day, as you saw a number of guys out there on the market, very good arms, still having decent years, certainly got 80 to 90 plus $1 million, and so there's still a good market. But I think that if he had still pitched like he did in 14, he would have been among some of the elite guys, and that would have driven the number.
Interesting that talking with Bobby Evans, the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, when you look at your ball club, Bobby, the strength obviously is starting pitching. Defense is very important, and your infield. I can't think of a single guy on that infield who not only isn't a good hitter, Brandon Crawford, Matt Duffy, the second-year third baseman, the young second baseman Joe Panik, and of course your young and up-and-coming star at first, Brandon Belt. But they're all good gloves. I mean, you've got potentially 2 or 3 Golden Gloves there, plus 4 guys that can all hit pretty well.
We were very fortunate, and the guys have really done a nice job adjusting to the big league level. All of them played a role helping us win it all in 2014. Duffy off of the bench, and then he comes in and wins the job last year as our everyday third baseman, finishes second in Rookie of the Year voting. The Gold Glove winner and Brandon Crawford, the All-Star, and Joe Panik. So a lot to be proud of. Brandon Bell, obviously with his defense and his bat in the middle of the order. A lot to look forward to, a lot of expectations there. Really a cornerstone piece of our club is our homegrown infield. And with Buster Posey behind the plate as a quarterback, our rotation, we feel good about it, and we recognize that these guys have a lot of work to do. You can't win anything on paper. You have to go out and do it. You got to stay healthy, but we feel good about the winner and where we started and where we'll start off this season.
What's the update on Linscomb?
My understanding is he will have a showcase. I don't have a date on that. That's really up to the agent and Timmy to figure out. We've kind of put ourselves in a position where we've established a rotation, signed a rotation. So it's a tough fit for us at this point. Some of that's by design. We felt like we needed to make our best efforts during the winter to put that rotation, and therefore there's not a spot for Timmy from a starter perspective, and that's disappointing because obviously he's meant a lot to us. But
sure,
our best shot probably is depending on this situation and how our spring goes. I mean, possibly an opportunity that could come out of the pen at some point, but I know his mindset's really to start, so we've got to wait and see how things play out, and we have to work out and see how he's doing.
Yeah, when he got, I don't want to call it demoted. I just want to say he got shifted. I think Bochy did a great job few years ago shifting him into the bullpen. He wasn't doing well as a starter. But the thing is, would it come to a point where he wouldn't even make the bullpen? You might want to think about trading him.
Well, Timmy, of course, is a free agent, so as a free agent right now, he'll have to decide where he goes.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think his priority is to try to find a club that has a spot in the rotation open. Ultimately, though, if he chooses, he doesn't like those choices of starter opportunities, he might look at bullpen opportunities, in which he could look at our situation and evaluate that versus his other options, as we would evaluate him versus our other options. And ultimately, the decision would have to be made, and it could result in him being clearly somewhere else, given his value point and how that showcase goes.
Yeah, that's I don't envy either side. Either you or him.
It is a tough call because
Okay.
he's such a popular guy, and he's in his prime still. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's never had any arm problems, but he's a victim of numbers right now.
Okay, tell you what, we're going to cut to our commercial break here. Here's our first trivia question about the NBA Masters, we'll call them. Who was the first ever NBA lottery pick? All right, and if you don't know the answer, when you come back, I'll give you a hint, all right? The first email with the correct answer wins a free 3-day 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. Who was the first ever NBA lottery pick? All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101 with Edward Brown and Bruce McGowan. We come back. Bobby Evans will still be with us for a bit.
I'm stumped on that one, Bobby. Yeah, I think it was 1985.
That is correct.
But I can't remember
That's
who
the
it was.
hint.
I remember the Warriors had the number one opportunity, but for some reason they didn't get the little ping pong ball, and I can't remember right off the top of my head. Was it? You got any idea? Are you an NBA fan, Bobby?
I'm a couple of years late, so I was thinking Lynn Bias, but that's two years too late. Of course, he was a Celtics number one pick. He went number one overall.
I'm just wondering if it might have. I was going to say Patrick Ewing, but Patrick Ewing would have been before that. God, I'm drawing a blank. But it's got to be something.
Bobby, I always like to give Bruce a little bit of stumped questions. It keeps him coming back to the studio.
Got me there.
Good. Nice work.
I just remember. I do definitely remember watching that on television for the first time. And Al Attles was representing the Warriors, and the Warriors had the worst record coming into that lottery, and they had the best chance to get that pick. They didn't get it, and actually I think they ended up getting Chris Mullin, which turned out to be a pretty good deal.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yeah.
And again, Bobby, thank you for joining us. We'll just do a quick segment with you. Okay, ready? Here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. When we got to the first commercial break, we asked this NBA question. Who was the first ever NBA lottery pick?
Well, I know it was 1985, and I know the Warriors had the best chance, but they didn't get it. They actually ended up getting Chris Mullin, who turned out to be a pretty good player. I'm stumped. I can't remember who it was.
Who did you say at commercial break?
Patrick Ewing?
That is correct.
It was Patrick Ewing.
Patrick
How about that?
Very good.
Wow, okay.
So why don't you reintroduce our guest?
Yeah, Bobby Evans, the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, who, of course, are coming off of 3 World Series titles in the last 6 years. Bobby, we haven't talked anything about Bruce Bochy, your manager, who has quietly become maybe the premier skipper in all of baseball. And, you talk to Bruce, you sit down with him, and he's just, what you see is what you get. There's no BS to the guy. He's a strong, firm personality. But what has he done in particular that you've noticed that makes him such a special manager with your ball club?
Well, he builds trust. He builds trust with the players. He builds trust with his coaches. He he works hard to prepare for every game. I don't know a manager that's any more prepared than Bruce Bochy before every game, before every series. And again, he manages roles, rests, and lineups as well as anybody. And I think the guys appreciate his honesty, his candor, and ultimately the way he defines roles so that players aren't surprised. They understand what their given role is whether they're in the bullpen or in the lineup or on the bench, and they also understand day to day what's expected of them. So a guy doesn't leave the ballpark, come to the ballpark the next day after a game and be surprised about what his role is or where he is in the lineup. I mean, because Coach has done a good job of communicating that, and that's part of what's brought the success and ultimately will result probably in him being in the Hall of Fame.
Of course, now the National League West, you've got the Dodgers who won the last couple of division titles. They didn't make any major moves, and they lost Zach Greinke to Arizona. It seems like every time though Arizona goes out and makes a bunch of free agent moves, and I remember San Diego did this a couple of years ago, it just doesn't work out. They did bring in Greinke, so right now a lot of people are looking at Arizona as a team that would challenge the Dodgers and challenge you. Is it going to be pretty much a three-way dogfight, you think, with these two teams, the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers in your division with you?
There's no question that they'll be two of the toughest, but I don't ever dismiss San Diego or Colorado because they always play us tough, whether we're even at home at AT&T or certainly on the road, especially in Colorado. And it's just a tough division overall. I mean, you play each one of them 18 times, and it's a big portion of your schedule. And there's always some unknown when you play a club that's not necessarily built from a free agent market or not necessarily built from even their farm system, but has a hodgepodge of different guys coming at you that maybe you don't expect and you don't know as well. And therefore, you have to prepare, advanced scouting, and players seeing guys they've never seen before. It can be very different and a different look and can make even the teams that aren't as built as strong play again.
Spoken like a true diplomat.
Well, as far as the other teams around the league, I mean, the Cubs, had a great year last year. They were disappointing in the playoffs, but they look to be a team that might break through finally and go to the World Series and for the first time in 70-plus years. And the Mets last year, with that pitching staff, I mean, they're right up there with you guys. And a young, good, solid pitching staff. I would think those are the two teams, perhaps besides yourself in Arizona, that you have to keep an eye on.
But did Daniel Murphy just get traded?
He did, but I mean, still, Bobby, don't you agree that the Mets, on paper at least right now, because of the fact they made it to the World Series, should be at least considered a co-favorite to win your pennant, the National League pennant?
Well, there's a lot of good teams in the National League, and I never count out the Cardinals either. So
Yeah, sure.
It's tough, and Cubs were extremely difficult to beat last year and made it into the postseason, of course, as well as the Mets. And there's a lot of good baseball ahead of us. We're going to have to battle, and there's different strengths for different ones of those clubs. But if everybody's healthy within the National League, I tell you what, it won't be easy.
So, Bobby, let me ask you from a front office standpoint. So, okay, Daniel Murphy has a great postseason, except for the World Series, he makes some key errors. How much of that really made the decision for them, do you think, made the decision for them to trade him? I mean, because if he had played fairly well in the World Series, I kind of get the feeling they wouldn't have been trading him.
Well, again, he was a free agent, so I think that in their mind, they had to measure the value in terms of a deal for them that worked. And there's never an easy answer in those kind of circumstances. I mean, he'd been with them a long time, and it was a big part of their postseason success. But I think that at some level, with the pitching they had, I think they looked at Steele Walker trade as an opportunity to perhaps get a little better defensively, and for them it was opportunistic, not a long-term commitment. And again, they probably got guys in the system that they're looking at too, where Murphy was going to be more of a multi-year scenario.
I mean, I just wonder, it just reminded me, I don't remember how many years ago, but the Giants right fielder made a key error in, it was either the playoffs or getting one of the last games of the season that missed the playoffs. I mean, it was a really major error, and it was an easy pop-up.
Oh, you're talking about Jose Cruz Jr.
Yes.
Way back in 2003, he dropped the fly ball in Miami. Yeah.
He was gone.
Yeah, and that was kind of, Bobby, were you with the club then when that happened? That was a strange thing because he was having such an amazing season.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, he wasn't only having an amazing year. I mean, a good year. He was having an amazing year defensively. So for him to make that error in right field in Florida in a deciding game of the postseason, it was really, I think it would have made it series 2-2 and taken us back to San Francisco, or taken us at least to game 5. It was heartbreaking and very tough. I mean, he was a free agent after the year, and so that happens. I don't know that. I looked at Matt Holliday. He made a really awful error with St. Louis, but he was a free agent after the year, and they signed him a huge multi-year deal. Again, you're never going to let one play determine you guys stay. I think that there's a lot of factors.
Yeah, Bobby Evans is joining us, the general manager of the Giants. Got to ask you, you matriculated up through the Giants organization in terms of working as an understudy to Brian Sabean. How did you get involved with this, Bobby? Did you play college baseball? Did you play minor league baseball? How did you get involved in the front office of the San Francisco Giants? How'd that happen?
Well, as a kid, all I ever dreamed of was playing in the big leagues. And when I was in college, I tried to walk on at the University of North Carolina. I didn't make it. I ended up being a student manager my freshman year, and then converted to playing club baseball my sophomore, junior, and senior year, just so I could continue to play the game. But one summer after my sophomore year, I got an internship with the Red Sox in Boston and worked in the scouting and player development office at Fenway Park. And Eddie Casco, Ed Kinney, Lou Gorman, and Dick Bresciani, and guys like that were there and really showed me the ropes. And I got exposure to really a childhood team that I grew up near and loving, and experience that I really just never thought about being in the front office. So when I went back for my junior year college, I began looking at athletic or sports opportunities that might be of interest in the future. Ended up getting a job in the athletic department, an offer of an internship with the Charlotte Hornets, the NBA. But I interviewed for a job in the commissioner's office shortly after graduating, and so I ended up going to work in Faye Vincent's office in New York, and gave me another great exposure to every major league team. In the commissioner's office, you work with all 30 teams, and so it was a unique opportunity. It gave me a unique perspective, and so when I saw that the Giants had an opening, their development director had resigned. I sent in a resume, interviewed with Brian Sabean, and on the day after my 25th birthday, I moved to San Francisco.
Wow!
Began working with the Giants, and now year 23 right now.
That is amazing. That's a great story, and of course you've been there for the entirety of this wonderful new ballpark. People forget that when the Giants were at Candlestick, that was really a kind of like an albatross around the franchise's neck, and now you may have arguably the best facility to play in America.
Well, yeah, Candlestick was for me. Having not followed a ton of National League baseball over the years, I really became a Giants supporter in 1993, watching the amazing run of what Dusty and Will Clark and Barry and the whole group did in '93. I was working in the commissioner's office, staying up late watching games. So it was pretty cool for me when I came to the Giants in 1994 to have really followed the team all through '93, and now working at Candlestick. My first game ever at Candlestick, or first day ever at Candlestick, was my first day on the job, and it was. I think I parked in the player lot, had to walk around half the stadium, but just so close to the front office, and I'm glad that I got a chance to work there. I was 6 years there before we moved to AT&T Park, and it makes me appreciate all the more what we have at AT&T.
And Bobby, do you get involved? Are you the guy who actually negotiates the contracts on behalf of the owner?
Right.
Okay.
How difficult is that sometimes? Because that can be a contentious process, especially if you have an older player who's got a lot of pride. I mean, you have to kind of finesse that, don't you?
Well, over time, there's a way to do it in a sense that I think is fair to both sides. It doesn't have to be contentious. I mean, it certainly can agree to disagree, and there's certainly value points that the player or an agent might have that doesn't really match up for a club, and that happens. Sometimes you go your separate ways, or sometimes there's a way to resolve that through an arbitration process or through compromise. And I think for us, having worked with agents, I don't work with just agents on major league deals. I work with agents on players that we sign out of the draft. I work on those with those same agents as we sign them to their minor league contracts year after year. And I work with those same agents as we talk about playing time, as we talk about major league free agents, as we talk about minor league free agents. And so you spend so much time working with agents over the years. There's really a
Hey, Bobby, stay with it for 2 seconds. Let me just go to a quick commercial break. We'll come back, let you go, and then we'll be done. All right?
Okay.
In the NBA, who were the original Twin Towers? All right?
Okay.
Stay with us. You're listening to Sport Econ 101. We'll be right back.
Okay. Sorry about that, but we
Sorry.
have to. Unfortunately, we got these hard breaks in there.
Yeah,
Stations go.
Was that Elijah one and Samson, or is there?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Very good. We'll let you answer that one. I was going to say
Tim Duncan.
I was going to say Econ, and I couldn't remember right off the top of my head.
Very good.
Samson actually played briefly with the Warriors. He played there a couple of years.
Yeah, he wasn't very good when he played.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So, Bobby, you're originally from Massachusetts, then?
Yeah, so we were in Massachusetts from the time I was 2 until I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 3rd grade, we moved to North Carolina. I was the youngest of 4. We moved to North Carolina. I grew up in high school there, ultimately college. And
What kind of work did your dad do?
my dad was in the public health service,
Uh-huh.
and he served as a dentist.
Really?
And so when I was 9 months old, we left Staten Island, New York, where I was born, and moved to Walnut Creek. And my dad attended Cal Berkeley to get his master's in public health.
Oh.
So that my mom and dad moved 4 children all across the country for about an 18-month period, lived in Walnut Creek, and then we moved to Boston.
Wow.
That's funny because I was born in Brooklyn, and my dad moved 4 of us kids and my mom out to California.
Similar story there.
Yeah. Crazy. Okay, and we're not going to take too much of your time. Come back, let you answer the question. I'll ask you like maybe just 1 or 2, and then we'll be gone. Okay?
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks again, Bobby, for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Okay, here we go.
No sweat.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Bruce McGowan. We cut to the second commercial break. We asked this trivia question. Who were the original Twin Towers? And our guest, Bobby Evans, knows the answer.
Yes, he does. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, Elijah and Samson.
That is
correct. Those were the 2 guys.
That's correct.
Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson. That's right.
No, I wanted to go back to player contracts for just a minute here. You know, I'm a firm believer in incentives. Now, I know that the agents are like, no, you do it based on past performance type thing. I mean, how much can you kind of instill, how many home runs you hit, or making it to the playoffs, or being voted MVP, that sort of thing.
You're limited really in terms of award bonuses and what we call performance bonuses. Award bonuses typically reward players for MVP votes, first, second, or third, or Cy Young, first, second, or third, as well as winning a Silver Slugger Award or winning, or earning an All-Star selection. Those are typically the award bonuses that guys get. They're not huge amounts, but they vary, but they're typically anywhere in the 25 to 50, it's 100,000 typically, although some get inflated dollars. And then performance bonuses vary based on plate appearances or games pitched, or games played or games pitched. But those incentives, really are always a way to compromise the difference between what base salary guarantee is versus what maybe the other side thinks it should be.
Interesting. Hey, before we let you go, I got to ask you about your new center fielder, Denard Span, who comes over from the Washington Nationals. Of course, played with Minnesota before that. Hitting kind of his prime years, he is coming off an injury-riddled season last year. Is there a little concern about that? Because the guy he probably will replace in center field, Angel Pagan, has had a series of injuries in recent years. He's going to probably move over to left field, so Denard Span takes over. So you have 2 outfielders right now that have had some injuries, and then you have Hunter Pence coming off an oblique injury. Is there a little concern about Span and also just the depth of your outfield overall?
Well, there's always concern when you have injuries, especially guys coming off injuries, and that's why we just do a tremendous amount of research. And there's no surefire way to know one way or another, but our medical staff has just done a really great job. I mean, you go back to Tim Hudson, had really an awful break injury, run into first base to cover first on a play with the Braves, broke his ankle, leg down lower part of his leg, and missed the rest of the season, and then goes into the off season. He's a free agent. Our medical staff did a great job just doing research, meeting with the player, meeting with the doctors who did the surgery, MRIs, X-rays, medical notes, and ultimately he pitched 2 good years for us, including the 2014 World Series. And same with Michael Morris coming off a wrist injury. I mean, yet no guarantees that he'd be healthy. Yet we signed him, and he gets the game-winning hit in Game 7 in Kansas City. So there's no surefire way to know. All I know is our guys just do a tremendous amount of work and research to make sure we do everything we can to cover ourselves with risk and information. And again, we feel real good about where Denard Span is at, and very hopeful that he'll help us for the next 3 years.
Well, Bobby, it's really been a pleasure having you on Sports Econ 101. We look forward to running into you at the ballpark. And I was telling Edward, you know, not only one of the good guys in the game, but a really fast rising star in the executive branch of Major League Baseball, and you're really in a great spot right now, my friend. I think that you're going to be there for a while. It looks like this team, kind of like the Warriors across the bay. I mean, you guys both have some magic going on now. It really has got to be a lot of fun.
Well, thanks. I sure appreciate it. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, and remember, it's an even year, so anything less than winning, unfortunately, is going to be a considered disappointment.
I hear you.
All right, Bobby, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, that's Bobby Evans, general manager of the Giants, who worked under Brian Sabian. Interesting story about Bobby. You know, I got to know him slightly early when he was working with Brian Sabian. He was not a prominent figure in the front office, but was sort of quietly working alongside Brian. And I always got the feeling that this was a guy who was going to be the understudy. And sure enough, you know, Sabian has moved into a higher position where he's running the entire baseball organization from the president's chair. And, you know, Brian's kind of a little bit of a curmudgeon. You get to know him. He's a good guy, but a little less forthright. Bobby is not the most excitable guy, but, you know, again, like Bruce Bochy and like a lot of the people in this organization that were very straightforward. What you see is what you get. And I think, as I said, they've got a great thing going in San Francisco right now.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to let's move on for
Yeah,
a minute here. I
sure.
don't know if you saw this recent thing on Yahoo about Gilbert Arenas. Did you see that?
No. What's going on with the former Warrior?
Okay, so yeah, I tell you, when he was with the Warriors, he was so fun to watch.
Oh, he was great.
When
They
he went
should
to the
have
Wizards,
kept
he
him.
was good. I know. He was
Yeah. Never should have left the Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very good player. Okay, so apparently, this is the story, right? He wants to be at the very last game that Kobe plays, which I believe is in Utah.
Okay.
All tickets are sold out because it's Kobe's last game.
Sure.
And even Gilbert can't find a ticket that is reasonably priced. He doesn't want to pay the ticket price. So he apparently wants to approach the Lakers for a 10-day contract. So he can be on the bench and watch Kobe play.
The way the Lakers are playing, it wouldn't hurt to have him on the team.
Well, I was just thinking that, you know what, maybe I'll try to do the same because I can ride the bench just as good as anyone, right?
I'm telling you, you know, it's interesting. Gilbert Arenas, he had a career. He looked like he was destined, maybe not to be a Hall of Famer, but a perennial All-Star. I don't know what happened with him, whether it was injuries or attitude or just the wrong fit. But boy, he burned out of the league fairly quickly.
You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Vince Carter.
Yeah.
Where, you know, he was just awesome, and he was still could have been a little bit longer career too. But he just for something, I don't know what it was. Something just happened.
Yeah.
He just kind of lost his steam a little bit.
You mentioned Vince Carter. There's another guy and we're out here in the Bay Area, so we're looking at Warrior connections. The Warriors had the draft rights to him and traded the rights to Vince Carter for Chris Webber, who had a great rookie season, and then he and Don Nelson could not get along, and in 1994, the relationship fell apart, and the whole team imploded, and it took almost 20 years for that team to get their act back together again.
Was there a deal with him and PJ Carlesimo?
No, you're thinking about Latrell Sprewell.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Latrell Sprewell. Yeah,
Latrell
had that. Latrell actually choked PJ Carlesimo, who was coaching the Warriors. This was a few years later in the late 90s, and that was an ugly scene. And then Latrell there's another guy who disappeared from the game, and remember he had that infamous comment. He said he was trying to get a new free agent contract, and I think somebody offered him something like $30 million, and he said, "Hey man, I got to feed my kids." Yeah. Come on. And he's not in.
Must have a lot of kids.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say he hasn't been in the NBA for a long time too. It's interesting how some of these guys they're like meteorites. They flash and then they're gone. And it's kind of sad.
You know, the thing that I think was really hard for Webber was his last game of college. Yeah. He'll always be known for calling a timeout.
Yeah.
He didn't have any more timeouts. He was an awesome player at Michigan.
He was a great player at Michigan.
And he was good in the NBA, but there was something that just seemed to be hanging over his head.
That's interesting. Now you hear him on the television. He's doing a nice
job.
job.
Very nice job.
Very nice job. Good guy, too. I got to know him only as a rookie with the Warriors, but it's just a shame. He was 20 years old, and he had this agent who was just whispering into his ear all the time. Matter of fact, I tried to do an interview with him once on the phone, and his agent kept interrupting us. I couldn't get a straight answer from Chris because the agent was constantly filtering everything. And it was so frustrating. I was thinking,
It's not a
God,
politician. I mean,
well, I mean, I was thinking to myself, if this is how he deals with the media, imagine what it must be like with Don Nelson. Of course, Don Nelson was headstrong and a little egotistical, so you had old school versus new school. You know, not a good fit.
well,
Not a good fit.
okay, then moving on to something that's a little hard.
Okay.
Manny Pacquiao.
Oh, that's sad.
You know, it's sad.
Making a comment like that, and you know, he did apologize, but you have to be careful what you say. Yeah. You know, and for those that don't know, he was talking about gay people and why men shouldn't be gay, and you know all this nonsense. And again, you know,
disparaging remarks.
well, just disparaging remarks. And Nike, which has always had a fairly good reputation in terms of the way they, I guess you could say, in the way they treat people. Although I'm sure they have their sweatshops
Right, yeah.
in the Far East, but they immediately dropped him like a hot potato. They said, "Well, this is not how we talk about people." And Pacquiao has since recanted, but it's too late. The damage has been done.
No, I
That's
mean,
too bad.
he did say he respects their decision, so to speak. But
Well,
look at
he's
this.
a hardcore Catholic and he has his beliefs, but you gotta be careful. You know how you frame those arguments.
It's called self-control.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's funny. My son and I have talked about this, that everything that you say has to be truthful, but
Yeah.
not everything that's truthful, in your own feelings,
Sure.
truthful has to be said.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing that
That's a good point.
he could have kept a lid on it. And I mean, I don't know how much he was getting paid by Nike.
Well, what
but-
surprises me, Edward, is this guy's a politician now. I mean, isn't he running for president or something in the Philippines? I think he's a
Maybe.
senator. Boy, I know it's a predominantly Catholic country. I know that homosexuality is kind of frowned upon, but in that part of the world. But at the same time, you have to be in this day and age where everything is instant communication and your comments are immediately repeated a million times over on YouTube or
Yeah.
Twitter or whatever. You just have to be careful and keep that to yourself.
And it's not only him, but then you look at other situations where people have endorsements, and then they get
Yeah.
domestic violence or some other crime, and suddenly, I mean, they're losing millions
Yeah.
in endorsements and whatever.
Well, it's unfortunate. I mean, and again, I don't want to point fingers at those of us who work in the media, but oftentimes we're looking for the quick hit, the quick story that's going to titillate people. And it's a lot easier when you talk about the negative than the positive because, people like to take shots at those who are up higher, knock them down, and then build them back up again. It's just human nature.
Well, they say if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah,
And
that's
you know
still
what?
true.
Well, I'll tell you though, on Sports Econ 101, we're very nice to our guests.
We have to be.
I don't want to do anything to upset these guys.
No.
First of all, there's no reason to.
No reason to.
But also, I mean, I'm not, quote, Jerry Springer,
Well, and also we're dealing with fun and games. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't some important issues and that you don't take things, get a little serious about things once in a while. But this isn't, life and death. This isn't, the headline news. Sports is the fun part of life that we all enjoy, and it's diversion. And there are lessons we can learn, and they're good lessons to pay attention to. But again, I'm of the belief that if you spend too much time, mulling over the negative, that eventually you're just going to create a sort of a malaise around your own thing.
Well, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar,
That's
right?
a good point.
Yeah, and I figured, if we're not nice to these guys, they're not going to want to come back, and then the word will spread, and we'll get this reputation.
I haven't heard anybody yet complain. I think we've been pretty fair with most of our guests.
No,
So, yeah.
I have to say we haven't.
Yes.
We got a quick minute before we
Yes.
get to another break. What do you want to cover?
Well, I was going to say, it's been a slow time of the year because, supposedly a slow time of the year. We just had the NBA playoffs. We got Daytona 500 coming up. We had the NBA All-Star game, I should say. NBA, the Daytona 500's coming up. Spring training is opening up. The NBA stretch part of the season, second half of the season is approaching. NHL is always fun to follow. And of course, you had some great golf with the Pebble Beach National Pro-Am recently. So it actually there really isn't a dead time in sports. If there's a quiet time, Edward, February is probably it. But boy, once we get into March and April, we have March Madness, we have spring training, then we got baseball, the basketball, then the NHL playoffs. There's always something going on.
And the only 2 days that are, quote, boring are the day before the All-Star Major League Baseball and the day after.
That's a good point.
That's the only time
Yeah,
there's
well,
sports going on.
that's when you take a break and you just enjoy a little soccer, maybe.
True.
Yeah.
that's
We got to
good.
talk some soccer, by the way.
We will.
I feel badly that we haven't gotten into
Well, we
Premier
had
League.
Chris Wondolowski on.
Yeah, sure, we did.
We did
We
have
did.
him on.
Yes.
All right, so now I'm going to ask a question. that
Okay.
The rest of the audience is probably going to say this is hard,
Ah,
but for Bruce
To-
McGowan, the sports expert, he's going to say, "I know the answer."
well, I'll fake it anyway.
No, you'll know this one.
The ultimate in fakery here.
Okay, here we go. We're talking about NBA
Okay,
Masters. Right?
gotcha.
Which team did Lenny Wilkens lead to an NBA
Oh,
championship?
I know that. I know that one because I covered that team.
I know.
That was an easy one.
I knew I had to give you
Yeah.
one softball
There
question.
you go.
here. Now the rest of the audience is kind of going, "Wow, that's a hard question."
Yeah.
Well, maybe not all.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to Sports Econ 101. We're going to ask this question one more time, and then we'll let Bruce give the answer. Which team did Lenny Wilkens lead to an NBA championship? Which he was quite a good coach, wasn't he?
Very good coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back with some closing comments.
All right.
Yeah, I figured I'd go. I think Bruce covered this.
Oh yeah. I got to know Lenny Wilkens quite well. Kind of a curmudgeon, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, well, he was okay. He was always a little sarcastic. I don't think he really enjoyed dealing with the media too much. Hell of a coach, though. Heck of a coach. Forgot to get my ice cream today. I knew something was wrong.
Oh.
I'll have to get it on the way out. I love that stuff. I get once a week. It's okay.
Well, you do so much surfing. You keep it off.
God, up until yesterday, I was out 7 out of 8 days.
Wow.
Had some great times.
Yeah, yesterday was really weird weather.
Yeah, it was. That was strange. I had that rainstorm that
I
came.
was wearing shorts yesterday.
Whew. Well, it was warm, and then it was raining, and it was just weird.
And tomorrow I'm taking the motorcycle.
Well, it's supposed to rain off and on, but it's going to be most of the day it's going to be pretty nice. And Saturday, Sunday will be very nice again. And we're into another warm, dry spell Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay, I could use it.
Yeah.
I don't care about the drought. I can use it.
Hey, listen, we don't have any drought here in Marin County.
It's amazing how one big storm they say, oh, it's still a drought, but then they say, but we're at 90-some%
Well,
capacity.
they talk about a drought. It's more for the valley. It's more for the four counties that are doing well are Del Norte, Mendocino, Humboldt, Sonoma, actually 5 counties in Marin. All the counties north of San Francisco on the coast are all doing well. But everybody else, not so well.
That's why they have to get us to ship them
Yeah, our water.
our
I
water.
don't like that. Don't like that.
Here we go.
Okay.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host. And then there's Bruce McGowan, my co-host. We asked this easy trivia question for Bruce. Which team did Lenny Wilkens lead to an NBA championship?
And of course, Lenny Wilkens was an outstanding point guard with the old St. Louis Hawks, but he led the Seattle Supersonics to the 1978-79 title. I was in Seattle. I got to cover that team, and the year after that, Edward, they played all their games in the Kingdome in 79-80. They averaged 25,000 fans a game, and they lost in the conference finals to the Lakers with a rookie by the name of Magic Johnson that year. Interesting story about that team. Jack Sikma, John Johnson, Dennis Johnson, Gus Williams. It was a great group. And Lenny was not the easiest guy to deal with. He was kind of a sourpuss sometimes, but what a great coach. He really kept a cool head, and that was that Seattle community really embraced that team. I was so unhappy when they moved that team to Oklahoma City. That was just wrong. Wrong.
When did Sean Kemp play for them?
Played in the early '90s and late '80s, and they made it to the finals actually up in the mid '90s. '96, I believe it was. They lost to Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
The last time the Bulls won the title,
They call him the
or one of the last times.
They called him the man child, didn't
Yeah, he had something like 12 kids too.
they?
He did. He was prolific.
Prolific, yeah.
Prolific on and off the court. Sean Kemp.
Yeah,
right?
he didn't. He was one. I think he was one of the first guys who didn't go to college. He played right out of high school.
He was one of the first, I believe. Of course, Moses Malone, another guy, right out of college or right out of high school. Yeah.
All right. So, but by the way, this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 8%. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com.
Oh, what a fun show this has been.
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Our thoughts for the day. It doesn't matter who scores the points. It's who can get the ball to the score. Said Larry Bird.
Well, he was a great passer. Yeah.
Excellent. And Vince Lombardi said, people who work together will win, whether it be against complex football defenses or the problems of modern society.
Vince Lombardi had a reputation as being a hard ass. I thought Vince Lombardi was one of the most forward-thinking, progressive guys around.
He
But
sure was.
you know,
Okay,
never
tune
had
in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and giving away more free vacations for answering sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
All right.
Good. That was a good show.
Good show. All right. So we got Rick Welts next week.
Yeah.
That'll be good.